Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, we got our Lethargic LeSabre in the shop, and besides the mud daubers and all the leaves under the hood, well, it looks pretty good, Dave.
This thing looks fantastic. Problem is it's just been sitting for a long time, so it won't start.
Yeah, and what do you do when a car's sitting for a long time and it doesn't start? Well, obviously you change all the fluids, but the first thing is to get it to start. So spark, fuel, and compression. That's just the basics right there. Why don't you take us through spark?
You got it. Well, we need spark to ignite the fuel. So we're going to test it to see what kind of spark we're getting here. Going to pull off a spark plug wire. Now I've got a spark tester from our friends at RockAuto.com. And we will just plug that tester into the spark plug wire. And I'm going to clip it here. We're going to fire it up in there. Josh, go ahead and crank it. We'll see if we get any spark. Oh yeah, okay, good. Yeah, we're getting spark, so that means we've got a fuel problem.
Yeah, absolutely got a fuel problem. We can test that as well. We got a fuel tester from RockAuto.com, and GM's kind enough to give us a Schrader valve right up here.
Yeah, it's convenient.
Gotta love these 3800s. I'm gonna go ahead and connect this, and this is basically just gonna tell us if we have fuel pressure up here. Doesn't mean that the fuel pump's working or not working, but we can see. Josh, how about give me one more shot at it? Awesome. Yeah, we have nothing. We have no fuel pressure up there. Now, we don't know if it's voltage. We don't know what's going on with the pump, but here's an old school method as well. This is pretty cool. A lot of guys can just take carburetor cleaners. Maybe you don't have a fancy tools like this. Use it as an artificial fuel source. I'll spray a little bit in here, not a whole lot, and we're going to see if it wants to try to run or sputter. Go ahead, one more time. Whoa. There you have it.
Yeah.
So we're definitely down to fuel, no doubt about it.
Yep, you got it. Well, I'm going to go take a look at the service manual, see what I can find out about this car.
Well, while you do that, check out this graphic because it's Fuel Systems 101. Well, it all starts there at the fuel tank. You can see it down there. You may have a pump inline, or it could be submerged down in the fuel down there. Then it goes to the actual inline filter. That's going to be the high pressure side coming out of the fuel tank. Then you see it go through the T, that's the supply line to the fuel rails, through the fuel rails, and then usually exits out by a fuel pulse dampener or a fuel pressure regulator. Either way, you can see the injectors are connected there to the fuel rail, and then everything that's not used is returned back to the tank on the return line. You can actually see the fuel pump located right down there in the actual tank. And what the fuel pump's going to do, it's going to come up here, that's the pressure line you just saw, and it's going to feed these fuel rails, both of these fuel rails. Now, the fuel's going to run through these fuel rails, and it's going to go through the injectors at a given time when the computer decides to pulse it and put it in there. But a cool part is, on the exit here is a fuel pressure regulator. Now, what does that do? Exactly what I just said. It regulates fuel pressure. A vacuum source is connected to the fuel pressure regulator. And think about it. If you're idling, you have a massive amount of vacuum. That's going to hold that open. It's going to allow most of the fuel to return to the tank. Now, wide open throttle, there's not much vacuum. It's closed. And when it's closed, it backs up fuel pressure, and it gives you the fuel you need when you want it at wide open throttle. Then it all returns back to the tank. Well, I can actually show it to you in action here. When I turn the key on, you can hear the fuel pump run. Now it runs for 5 seconds and shuts off, primes the system. Now my computer is going to actually tell the injectors when I start it up when to run and how long to run those injectors. And there we go, fuel system in action. Well, we're idling along right now, but it's soon to be wide open throttle. When we return with more Tech Garage presented by RockAuto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. NH Oil Undercoating, the official oil-based rust prevention system. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Welcome back to Tech Garage presented by RockAuto.com, where we've got a little junk in the trunk, and that is because we removed our fuel pump from our LeSabre. And John, it wasn't too complicated at first. Got on the Magic Creeper, so we have a little padding there in the trunk, and removed the cover plate, which was easy, and a couple electrical connectors, and then we disconnected a couple quick disconnects from the fuel lines, and then we got a brass punch to make sure there were no sparks. You want to use brass. You don't want sparks around fuel. Knocked off the fuel pump retaining ring. And John, that's where the fight began. Started pulling the fuel pump out. It should pop right out. This one was swollen, and we kind of mangled it on the way out. And this is what's left of it.
You know what? Totally common. You guys are going to run into this every single day. I mean, if this was smell-o-vision, that smells like varnish, not fuel. I don't even think you had to worry about sparks. You couldn't light that with a torch.
It's so gross.
Anyway, you got this one to go in, a nice brand new one. one from Rock Auto, but I did you one better.
Yep.
Went ahead and got an extra pump. We got our master tech here wired it up for us. We can hit a 12-volt source. You can pump out all that varnish and work your magic, see if you can get it running.
We're going to get to it. Enjoy the smell.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's talk a little bit about the fuel system and the evolution of fuel systems and fuel pumps. You guys all remember the carburetor, man, about 3 PSI. You had a fuel pump right here, a mechanical fuel pump, and an eccentric on the cam. This is pretty cool. It would just spin around and mechanically pump this and put about 3 PSI in our carburetor with a Venturi effect. Choom, fuel went into the engine. Then we move over to the throttle body. We started to go into fuel injection. Now our throttle body is about 13 PSI. You can see the injectors located right here. The throttle body ran a pump. Now warning, the pumps are pretty similar and they look similar. They're in the tank, they're right here. This one may develop about 13 PSI, but then you run into the injection here on multi-port injection. Well, when you get to multi-port injection, it could be anywhere from 40 to 50 to 60. Usually looks like the same pump, but it's a lot more volume to the pump. So then we went to basically direct injection, man, up to 3, 4,000, 30,000 PSI. Be careful with that. Now, they also have to change the fuel filter. I want to show you a pretty cool demo. Here's a fuel filter right here. Now, this is an old nasty one here. You can see how it's all clogged up and it's not going to work too well. And this is a brand new one. Well, why is that important? Well, it's all about the amp draw, my friends. I got one set up here in a tank right here, and I got it hooked up in series through this meter so I can hook it up. And when I hook it up, you'll run it. Now, we got some odor-free mineral spirits here because Dave stunk us up with that fuel, but don't worry about that. But look at it pumping right here, and you can see the amp draw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to create a restriction. When I create a restriction, you see the amps start to go up. It's not a good thing. When those amps start to go up, we start to create a mechanical resistance in that pump, and we cause premature failure of the pump. Not a cool thing. So make sure you change the fuel filter as well. Now, you ever wanted to see inside the tank? Well, only at Tech Garage. Here you go. Get a float, goes up, gasoline's full, starts to go down, it goes down. Bam, you can check the resistance on that. Super easy to do as well. Well, all that's left with them, they get the fuel pump in. They do want to change that fuel filter, so let's check in with them and see how it's going.
All right, Josh, what's first?
First thing we need to do is depressurize the fuel system. Now, we disconnected our fuel pump relay, but yours might be slightly different, so make sure you check your service manual first. You definitely want to depressurize the fuel system before you take a fuel filter off, otherwise you end up with a face full of gas, and that is not fun.
That is not good. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that's not good for you.
First thing I'm going to do is I have a line wrench right here. I'm going to hook it up, and the reason for this line wrench is you don't want to round off the nut that attaches to your fuel line. Go ahead and pop that loose.
Yep, and on the other end, we just have a quick connect here, just like we had up with the fuel pump. So run that up. And you might be asking about this rag, by the way. It's a tip I learned from my buddy John Gardner. This keeps fuel from running all the way down my arm and into my armpit. You are going to thank me for this tip when you can do one of these yourself. Here, we'll pull this connector off. We're going to get a little bit of a bath here. Here it comes.
Good. Try to unthread mine a little bit more.
All right, there we go.
All right. If you want to go ahead and grab that other filter, this one's loose, go ahead and install that one.
All right, well, here's the new filter we got from rockauto.com, and we just reverse the process and it goes right in.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, stay tuned for more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com, and you're going to love the next segment because it's got a lot of flair.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Now, we promised you we're going to dig deep into the systems, and boy, this one is going deep. We're taking brake lines and brake hoses to the new level. Welcome to Garage Ed. Let's talk about brake hoses. That's where we're going to start. Now, brake hoses have to hold a lot of pressure. In order to do that, they're actually double-line brake hoses. So you can see they may collapse on the inside. This is the outer portion. Inside of there, they may very well be collapsed or broken, and it may not be so obvious. So what's going on? Well, here's a cool tech tip for you. Your brakes are locked up. I can't move the caliper whatsoever. I can't move the rotor. I'm trying to spin it. The wheel won't turn. Get the car up in the air safely with a jack stand. Come over to your brake bleeder right here. Take a wrench, crack your brake bleeder open. And when it's open, if your rotor starts to spin, well, that means that your line's collapsed and the fluid can't go back and it's holding it. Now, if you crack the bleeder and then the rotor doesn't move at all, that means that your caliper seized up and you're going to have to replace the caliper. That trick works every single time. Let's talk a little bit about brake lines. There's two different types of flares. There's a double flare and there's a bubble flare. So I'm going to demonstrate the actual double flare for you. I went and got this little cutter here. This is a line cutter, just like you would see in a plumbing store. It's no big deal. Put it on here, and what you do is spin it around. Every time you spin it around, I'm just getting a little tighter, and a little tighter. I keep turning this outside knob, and eventually, just like that, it's going to cut it. Now on this side, you have a little deburring tool. So I'm going to take that right there, run it in there, make sure I don't have any burrs in the line whatsoever. Then I'm ready to go. Now, if I'm going to use a double flare, I'm going to find one of these adapters. There's several adapters in the kit. I'm going to find the one that's going to go down there and it's snug. That one works really well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the flaring bar. This is the flaring bar. And I can take the flaring bar and find the line I'm using. And I can open it up here, put it into the line that I'm using, come down, clamp on it. You don't want to squeeze it or collapse it, but you want to make sure you're in the right one. So when you do, I think we can go down here. Yeah, that's even better. No, we'll just keep it in that 3/16, okay? I'll come back here, take the flaring bar, and I'll tighten it up. But the trick is right here, I'm going to put the tool on it. And what I'll do is I'm going to bring the line down to line up with the tool right there. So as I spin the line and I start bringing it down, I'll loosen the tool a little bit. I bring the line down. I go right about the level of that end of that tool right there. Put it in, upside down, to process. The first thing I'm going to do is take my flaring bar, put it over there, collapse it down. Once I collapse it down, I'll remove this, come back for a second shot, put it back on there, put it in there, and collapse it down a second time. That's a double flare. Now, what does a double flare look like? You can see it right here. That's a nice double flare. Now there's also the bubble flare. Now the bubble flare, just follow the instructions. There's not a lot different to it. Just a matter of using a yoke and a flaring tool and maybe a different adapter. But be careful. You have to make sure that it matches the fitting it's going in, no matter what, okay? This is accepting a double flare, it has to be a double flare. If it's accepting a bubble flare, it has to be a bubble flare. Either way, you can make a nice double flare or a good bubble flare.
And John, if you're making more of those, if you're making a bunch, you might want to upgrade because that's kind of the consumer kit. And those are perfectly serviceable, great to use, but you can make it easier. You buy yourself a pro kit like this one here. And I saw last year on the show when you use this. It's a great tool to use, make things a lot simpler. You can also do every kind of flare with this tool. And what you want to do is you find the right die for the size of the line that you're using. It's easy. You just switch those pieces around and then you secure the die into the flaring tool. Insert the brake line and you find the right adjustment on the tool according to the flare, whether you want to make a double flare or a bubble flare. And all you have to do then at that point is you pull on the lever and voila, not a whole lot of force and you have yourself a new flare.
That works the best. I mean, you know, professionals do it that way. Sometimes you're going to have to flare lines. I mean, it's not an easy thing. Dave, I walked out of the parts store. I was in a dealership years ago, and then I go to the parts counter, and they say, here's your brake lines, have fun. I'm like, no, man, I don't want to do all that mess. So I had to learn how to flare. It's a good practice.
Well, there's an even easier way to do it, John. You can go to rockauto.com, and you can get a pre-flared tube like this.
I should have known. You're going to come out with a fix for anything.
John, you got to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and you do that well, especially when it comes to the Master Technician Tech Tip, and that's coming up right after the break. So take a short one. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. Borla, the world's most winning exhaust. And by rockauto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Now, we're sure glad you stuck with us because it's time for the Master Technician Tech Tip. Hashtag MTTT, and it's all about the catalytic converters. But picture this, you're going down the road, bam, here's your check engine light. What do? No worries, you got your handy dandy rockauto.com scan tool. Plug it in, shows a code P0420. What does all that mean? Well, it's a catalyst efficiency. Very common code, as a matter of fact. What does even that mean? Well, guess what? Your catalytic converter's deteriorating. How does your car know that? Well, you got a system of oxygen sensors. If you look right here on the table, you have a pre-catalyst converter oxygen sensor and a post-catalyst oxygen sensor. And what's happening is they're reading the condition of your car. That's rich, lean, rich, lean. That's how your computer works. So I take some hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide and NOx, and I shove them in this end, and this first oxygen sensor is bouncing back and forth. And if your catalytic converter is doing your job, well, what comes out is nothing but carbon dioxide and water and some nitrogen, bam, out the back, and guess what? It looks like this. You can see the graphic right there. Simply just goes from a good cat bouncing back and forth to a nice straight line. That's good. The other one though, it's bouncing on both sides. What happened? Well, the gases went in, it sniffed a rich lean condition, and the second one sniffed a rich lean condition. That means your catalytic converter's not doing its job. Well, then what? Guess what? Tech tips, gotta love it. Couple things you can do with your catalytic converter. You can just take a hammer and you can actually rattle on the exhaust, okay? And what happened, if you hear some kind of vibration or something going on inside of there, well, your catalytic converter inside could be actually deteriorating. It's called thermal meltdown. You can see it right here. And what's going on inside of there is it starts to chip apart. And when you hit it with the hammer, well, you hear all that stuff in there rattling away. That's one good test. Now, there's a couple other things you can do. You can actually do a vacuum test. You can take a vacuum gauge like this right here. You can hook it up to a reputable vacuum source, something past the throttle body. You know, all those vacuum lines on your car, even the brake booster is a good one to get some vacuum from. Then you go ahead and start your car. You let it idle about 2,000 RPM, and you just watch the gauge. If the gauge starts dropping, well, you're losing vacuum. Why is that? Well, the exhaust is not coming out. If the exhaust is not coming out, you can't get the intake in. If you can't get the intake in, you lose vacuum. Now, there's also a pyrometer test. You can actually take this here and shoot the front and the back of the cat. The catalytic converter is an oxygen storage container. It's pretty cool. You either have a honeycomb that looks like this material right here, or you have some pellets inside of the catalytic converter. Either way, they're coated with rhodium, palladium, platinum, different catalysts that goes inside of there. So your HCs come in, bam, it does its job, and out goes clean exhaust. So shoot the front, shoot the back. I should raise temperature, that oxygen, just like blowing on a fire. It should be able to heat it up and come out the back. So you should see about a 25 to 50 degree difference from the front to back. You know you're doing great. Now, a foolproof test, you can actually get a pressure gauge. It looks just like this here. Hook it up to a car. It's going to tell you exactly what's going on with your exhaust, and Josh is doing that right now.
Thanks, John. I was actually going to test this catalytic converter, but I saw that the O2 sensor is way up high, so I figured I'd come back here post-cat just so everybody at home can see exactly what's going on. But the first thing before you want to take this O2 sensor out and hook up your back pressure gauge is go ahead and get you some rust penetrant. Spray around there, let it soak 30 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, depends how rusted up it is. Let it soak in there, and after that you should be able to break these things free pretty easily. Right here I have an O2 sensor socket specifically made for O2 sensors. We got ours at rockauto.com. They have plenty to choose from for your vehicle. What this does, this slit right here allows it to go up and over that pigtail so you can get that O2 sensor out there with any kind of problem. I've already broken this loose. I'm just going to unthread it, and I have right here in my hand an adapter that I'm going to place in here. A lot of these pressure gauges don't have this adapter, so don't go looking for your adapter if you don't have one. But I got one. I'm going to thread it in. It's got a quick connect on it, and I have a pressure gauge here. This is my back pressure tester. In my case, I have red for bad, green for good. I got a guy up there, he's part of our team, his name is Trip. He's part of our tech team. I'm gonna get him to go ahead and start this vehicle, and we'll watch these gauges. Hopefully it's gonna stay in the green, but it may go to the red. Let's check it out and see. Go ahead, Trip. All right, that's good. This one stayed where it was supposed to stay, so everything past this pressure gauge is good.
Awesome job, Josh. You know, that's a good catalytic converter, but if you have a bad one, no worries. Tom and Dave has you covered.
Well, John, in the old days, it was one size fits all in the automotive industry, but it's not that way anymore. You can take these catalytic converters and this whole assembly, for example.
Right, yeah, there's really 3 different categories regulation-wise for catalytic converters now. There's the EPA federal regulations that most states that require you to comply with. Then there's states that require California emissions, so we'll have converters that are California emissions compliant. And then there's another level that if you're for sale in California, you need to be California Air Resource Board compliant, CARB compliant. So, and that's like special documentation and stampings on the catalytic converters. So you can actually filter the catalog for, if you need a CARB compliant, you can unclick federal compliant, and you'll just see the CARB catalytic converters.
And what if I'm not in California? Can I still use those CARB compliant parts on my car?
Yes, yes. So you can use a CARB compliant catalytic converter in any state, but in California, you can only use CARB compliant.
So you play it safe and put that on your car anyway.
Sure, yeah, if you're going to move to California.
I like it. You never know. And of course, we see the hole for the O2 sensors. What other parts and pieces do you have that are going to go along with this that I can put on my vehicle?
Yeah, we'd have the upstream and downstream oxygen sensors. We'd have the gaskets and the hangers and the brackets, everything back of the catalytic converter, the muffler, tailpipe, all the parts to fix up your exhaust system.
Well, it's all the parts you'll ever need, and they are serious. If you look in their catalog, there's a huge variety to choose from on just about everything at reliably low prices, John.
Well, it's been a great day here at Tech Garage, but the verdict's right here. Josh Ellis, is it going to run? Whoa, smooth too. Go ahead, shut it off, man.
Outstanding.
Way to go. That's 9 for 9 here at Tech Garage.
Still undefeated, John?
Yeah, buddy.
Well, we're not going to leave it like this. Of course, we're going to service the car. Our friends at Rock Auto gave us some oil and some transmission fluid and the filters that we need to get this thing up and running in tip-top shape.
No doubt it's been sitting for a while, you know. We're out of time for today, but you're going to have to join us next week. We may go 10 for 10, but in the meantime, look at us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that cool stuff. We'll see you next week for more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
Production assistance for Tech Garage is provided by Chihuahua College, located in Marianna, Florida. Founded in 1947, Chihuahua was ranked recently as one of the top 3 community colleges in the United States.